To any U.S. network today, you're going to see that story, that story, that story, and only that story. That's it. That's all you're going to see. It's 24 hours of just that, right? Is it media manipulation at its absolute best? Why? Well, it denies the China victory, right? U.S. reporters don't want to tell you that China just scored a huge win over the United States. It overcovers a meeting which may not amount to anything at all. And then there's another story that the mainstream media may be misreporting as well. And I want to play something for you. This is interesting. Listen here. This is George Galloway. He was on this morning with my colleague Manila Chan, who does a fabulous job on In Question, by the way. Listen to what he is suggesting here about who's really pulling the strings of these protesters.
I have no doubt that there are foreign hands in this trouble. I see this as another of these color-coded revolutions, so-called, that took place in the Ukraine and in Georgia and many other places.
It was actually even longer, but I want to talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to introduce our guests here. Joining us are two of the best when it comes to this story in particular. NRS correspondent Michelle Greenstein has been all over the China-U.S. story for months now and has done really, I mean, cover your ears, groundbreaking reporting. She really has. Also, Boom Bust host, thank you, you can get him down now. Also, Boom Bust host Christy Ali, knows the business, probably as well as anybody out there when it comes to the business side of this conversation that we're about to have. So, Michelle, let me begin with you and the Galloway comments we heard a little while ago. What he seems to be saying is that what's going on in Hong Kong may not actually be what it appears to be, that there's something behind this, something pushing, someone perhaps with an agenda. Is he right?
Yes, you could certainly say he's right, and this is an element of the Hong Kong protests that are not being so covered in the Western corporate press. Yeah. No surprise there. So I want to show you something. I want to show you the organizers of these anti-extradition law. They call themselves the Civil Human Rights Front, and I want to show you the members of the organizations of the Civil Human Rights Front. So
these are the protesters.
That's right, the organizers of these protesters. Okay. Not all of the protesters are part of these groups, but these are the organizers. We've got the Hong Kong Institute of Human Resource Management. We've got the Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions, as well as a number of others. Now, what do all of these organizations that you see listed here have in common?
Tell me.
They're all taking money, and they've all worked with an organization called the National Endowment for Democracy. They've all received funding from this organization. Now, the National Endowment for Democracy has been funding groups in Hong Kong. This goes back to the 90s, but just in the last year, the Hong Kong Institute for Human Resource Management, which is the first thing that you saw on your list there moments ago, got $90,000 in just 1 year, in just 2018, from the National Endowment for Democracy.
Would you tell us, so our viewers can understand, who the hell is the National Endowment for Democracy? Who are these people?
That's right. So who is this NGO funding these protesters, right? Great question. I'm so glad you asked. So let's listen to Carl Gershman. Here's what he had to say. He was actually the president of the National Endowment for Democracy at the time he said this. He said, "It would be terrible for democratic groups around the world to be seen as subsidized by the CIA. We saw that in the 60s, and that's why it's been discontinued. That's why the endowment was created." So here we have this NGO that's been created to, in a sense, do the CIA's work overtly. And let's hear it from Alan Weinstein, who actually helped draft the legislation to create the NED. Here's how he put it. He put it a bit simpler. He said, "A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA." So you don't have to take it from me. You can take it from these men who were involved from the ground up at the National Endowment for Democracy. Here they are saying that this is, in a sense, a front for the CIA itself. And as you know, the CIA loves funding opposition groups.
Well, but, you know, a lot of Americans don't know this, right? I mean, you and I this weekend were texting back and forth about the fact that just as back in 2009, the United States actually perpetrated a coup in Honduras, the country where we're having all these problems now with all these immigrants coming. The Obama administration, and it was led by none other than Hillary Clinton, right?
That's right.
That's kind of,
and that's just
we do this.
Many right-wing coups that the U.S. has supported in the past, of course. The National Endowment for Democracy was involved in Honduras.